Okay, so if I stopped right there, I could gather what I've collected so far just from this section, and I can say that novice readers use two strategies for reading words: pronouncing beginning consonant and then the whole word, and using pronounceable word parts. That's what I've gathered so far from this particular section, okay? The next part says, although half the youngsters had been taught through an explicit synthetic phonics approach, there were very few instances of a word being decoded letter by letter. Okay, so this is telling me that this is not what the students are doing. So even though the students had been taught that way, they're not using that particular strategy. So again, I can get rid of this as unnecessary for my summary. Next, it says the other half had been taught to read through an implicit phonics method, one that advocated the use of context and initial consonants. However, there was very little evidence of use of context to decode difficult words. There was also limited use of phonics rules, except for the final E, silent E generalization. Again, this is showing me what the students are not doing, so I can get rid of this as unnecessary for my summary. So still, what I have collected so far is still the two strategies that students do use when they are reading words. The next section says, varied studies have revealed much the same thing. Glass and Burton also found a preference for the use of pronounceable word parts as a decoding strategy. I can get rid of this because it's repetitious. They've already established earlier on in this section that students have a preference for using pronounceable word parts as a decoding strategy. So this is, I delete it because it's repetitious, not because it's unnecessary, because we did collect it earlier, but it's telling me this again. This is called a repeated reference. I don't know if you'll remember that from the article that we read, the first article of the semester, but repeated references was one of the strategies that's used in summarizing. So even though we're deleting it here, it still shows that it's important because the author chose to tell us this two separate times. The next part says, when 15 decodable but rare words, example astrolabe, and 15 nonsense words composed of pronounceable elements, gunner, fentor, vite, were presented to superior decoders in grade 2 and 5, 85% of the responses fell in the sound cluster pronounceable word part category. For example, st, im, u, lus. Okay, this is again an example of what they've already said. Students use pronounceable word parts to figure out what a word is. So this entire section right here I can delete as unnecessary in terms of collecting information for my summary.